Welcome to the Floral Shop podcast, where flowers and business blend seamlessly. Join our journey to uncover the secrets of elite event designers and get insights into the art of running a successful floral shop. Here is your host, Ziv Raviv.
Hello and welcome to the Floral Shop podcast. Today with me is Nancy White from the Flower Bar, all the way from Larchmont, New York. Hello, Nancy. How are you?
Hi, Ziv. I'm fine. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you for sharing this moment with us, looking into your shop. We were quite astounded by the prettiness of everything that you do, your designs and your professionalism. We just had to talk. So tell us a little bit about your journey, how you've been in this industry for a while now.
Not that long. I think according to some people, I'm still a newbie. I've only been working in the industry for about 15 years. I've owned the shop for 13 and a half years next week. And I come to this is a sort of a career pivot, like a lot of women. They hit a certain age and they decide that they're going to do something different. My background is in sales and marketing and art, believe it or not. So I got to the point where big life changes, bought a house, moved in with my then boyfriend, now husband, and was looking for a new direction. I couldn't see myself doing what I had been doing when I was 60 years old. So a friend of mine suggested that I check out the Botanical Garden in the Bronx. They have a program. They had a whole career night. And I went to the career night and I thought, I could do that. That sounds like fun. I've always loved flowers. A lot of people say, I've always loved flowers. But there was even a time I always would buy fresh flowers when I went to the supermarket. There was a period of time when I was separated from my then husband and was living in the city and didn't have any money, but I would buy a bunch of tulips to decorate my apartment rather than eat. It was just, I preferred flowers over anything else. So I've always really loved flowers and recognized how much they enhance anyone's life and occasion. When I got married, I went to the shop that I now own and I asked them to give me an estimate. And it was a tiny wedding. And this was back in 2008, before the crash. They quoted me for this tiny little wedding with literally a bouquet and a centerpiece and a few things to decorate. He had all these crazy ideas and he wanted to charge me $3,000, which even I would say is a bit absurd, even in today's prices. So I thought that's nuts. And I've always been very entrepreneurial and kind of can do. So I just said, I'm going to do it myself. I got my tax ID number and I went up I found some local wholesalers and I didn't know what I was buying, but I just went up there and bought a lot of pretty things and some friends helped me and we made what we needed. I had a book teaching me how to make a bouquet. Anyway, and so I did it. It all worked out well. And I did it all for $300.
It's such a great story. There's so many people that get into business just because they feel like they could do this by themselves. And they try and they see that not only they can, but they enjoy it. So what made you decide to do it more and more?
So I thought, okay, I need a new career. And so I just decided I would pursue the floral design. And I'm a big believer. I needed training, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have any idea of the mechanics of it or the principles or whatever. I was an art major in college. I have a very developed eye in design. I went to graduate school in graphic design. I've worked with some of the top designers in the world in my previous life. And so I went to the Botanical Garden and they had a work study program. So I worked there. And for every 2 hours I worked, I got an hour of class time. And I still continued doing my other job, which was I was a freelance advertising salesperson. And I worked for various publications selling advertising. And I worked out of my home and had very flexible hours. So I was able to do all this at the same time. As part of that program, I had to get an internship. And the people that owned the store that I now own were neighbors of mine. And I asked them if I could, work as an intern. And so I started working here on Valentine's Day weekend, 2010. And let me tell you, that first day, I could barely get up the steps to my front door. I mean, it is really physically demanding, but I loved it. Even though all I was doing was wrapping and sweeping, I loved it. So they hired, after I completed my internship, they did hire me. I worked here like 1, maybe 2 days a week, depending on how busy they were. And really just helping out. And then that summer, the people that owned the store, they had the misfortune of buying it, and then the economy crashed. So they had to actually go out and get jobs, and they never actually worked in the store. That wasn't the thing that they should do for the long term. So anyway, they decided they wanted to sell it and offered it to me. And of course, I had been thinking I'm going to do event work, but I really liked retail. And so we ended up working it out where we bought the store. We closed on it 2 weeks before Valentine's Day, 2011. So it was like a year from when I started actually working in the business.
That's quite fast.
Yes. And believe me, I knew nothing. I couldn't pronounce Lysianthus. I didn't know the difference between Italian ruscus or Israeli ruscus. I mean, I didn't know the names of the different colors, the varieties. I really didn't know it. I didn't know how long flowers lasted. I didn't know about stem lengths, except for roses. I mean, I didn't know anything. So my husband, he's my business partner. He's a retired actuary. So of course he loves his spreadsheets. And so he made a spreadsheet for me of what they had purchased the year before for Valentine's Day. And then I would be on the phone late at night with my rep at Delaware Valley, who was I will always be so grateful to him for his patience and education. I mean, he's just been a really wonderful partner for me. I wouldn't be where I am really without his help. So I have undying loyalty to Mike at DV Flora. Anyway, he would walk me through it. And, I still didn't know what I was doing, but at least we had flowers coming in. And everything was it was a really tough, that beginning, was really tough. I worked very hard. I wasn't paying myself anything. We went to Delaware, had a flower palooza that spring. And it was kind of like a floral conference, and they had all kinds of speakers, and they had, a big show, and they had design. And anyway, there were 2 speakers there to talk about the business side of things, which we had really didn't know anything about. The people I bought the shop from didn't keep track, I don't think they knew the proper markup, but they certainly weren't doing it. They were like, okay, well, roses are $3, even though no matter what they paid for the roses. I mean, it just didn't add up. And no one was keeping track of, what they were putting in the arrangements. No one, the way they were selling them. I think our average sale was $50. I mean, a $50 arrangement was considered a medium size, and that was considered a lot of money. So all of that stuff. So we hired one of the consultants who was really more of a business consultant and really gave us a good grounding on the operations side, what things should be costing, what we should be doing in terms of markups, how we should be allocating resources. And we worked with him for, I don't know, maybe a few months. And then we realized there was a lot of stuff. It was going to take longer. It wasn't like these weren't quick fixes that we could just do. And they were paying him a lot of money, and it just didn't make any sense. We could sort of monitor this ourselves. So that's what we did. And then eventually I also worked with Tim Huckabee, was the other person who was speaking. And I think I brought him on board like maybe a year later for training. And our average sale went from $50 to close to $100. And now it's at about $100, $135. It really depends on the time of year, because obviously prom time is a lower sale. But I'm a big believer in applying business practices to being a florist. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that industry has, is that, and my employees, the same thing. They think they want to be designers, but that's just one piece of the job. It's what I'm selling. And this is what I've always said to my employees and to my customers. And we deliver extraordinary. We are selling an experience. We are not selling flowers. Flowers is just one aspect of that experience that we're providing to our customers. So everything that we do in the store, whether it's in the store, how we answer the phone, how we advise our customers, how we handle their order, everything about that has to be done at the highest level. We want to be under promising and over delivering. And what that requires is not only just training, which is a constant, but it also requires a mindset that is reinforced on a constant basis and requires systems. You can't just fly by the seat of your pants, right?
Yeah.
And when I started figuring all this out, we were in sales, we were in the six figures, low six figures, okay, when I bought the shop. And so, I couldn't afford employees, I couldn't afford a lot of things, but I would see what went wrong, where were the problems. And I would try to think, okay, what can we do so that problem doesn't happen again? So I developed systems for how we order the flowers, how we make sure we have the flowers we need on time, that we have things are done on time, that orders are taken correctly, that all of these things. So you're trying to minimize. I remember people didn't like using the computer. So they would write down the order and then they forget to enter in the computer and the poor person would never get their order delivered. That happened 4 times that first Valentine's Day. And there's one guy, I swear to God, he didn't come back for like 5 years. I was like, oh, George, you're back. I remembered him because I felt so badly. And so we have to have systems and people have to follow the systems. And that's just extremely important to the success of the business. And so we've grown 4 times what we were, from when we started. And I think a big part of it is because of the quality of our experience, whether it's with the design, with the sales, with the whole execution. That's what I attribute to our success.
I want to ask him a more specific question because it's really mind-blowing. You took a huge turn in your career with no experience and you challenged yourself to design your own wedding, which is a challenge that you didn't, stop there. You then actually started to learn and to become an intern and eventually within a year to buy a shop in a really hard economy, like you were taking a risk there and you got the support that you needed from Mike and from team, but still like to double your business 4 times and to grow from this 6 figures to something that's significant, that's not something that is very easy to do. So, sometimes we have hiccups with our clients, with our businesses, with our staff. And what you do with those hiccups can make or break your growth trajectory. And I think you did something right with some of those hiccups. You identified the mistake and you made the process to not repeat that mistake. For example, you mentioned under promise, over deliver, but you can't just over deliver infinitely because you're paying for every extra rose that you're putting in there. So what are some of the hiccups that happened to you that you were very proud of the solution that you came up with, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, some of this is really minor. It seems minor, but it's really important. For example, when you take the order, that you get all the information correctly, that you double check. Our system, you're supposed to verify the order before you send a confirmation of the order. That's an opportunity to check it and make sure you didn't leave off the .com on the email, or that you have there are no misspellings in the card message. All of those little details are important. And so you send that out. The other thing is that when the order prints out, the manager who's looking at it, if there's something unique about it, like it's just the way our orders print out, it's not always clear that it's multiples. Like let's say somebody wants 2 of one thing. It's not always if you looked at it quickly, you wouldn't see that you're supposed to make 2. And we've had that situation where we were supposed to make two and we only made one. And someone was having a luncheon and they only had one. So you don't want that to happen. So simple. This is like, we highlight it. This is just simple. It's just checking it when it comes in, making sure that you understand, making sure that you're checking it, making sure that the description would make sense to somebody. Okay. Tim talks about, those kinds of things. The other thing I learned, every night before I go home, I check the orders. I check the next day. I check the day after. I check the day after. I check the next week. Because the more I know in advance, the better I can plan. I don't want to have to be like, oh my God, I need something. And then I've got to get a delivery from somebody or send somebody, pay somebody an hour to go up and an hour to go back to pick up some flowers that we need because we knew we needed them, but we didn't realize it. So it's all those kinds of things. And those are the other big hiccup, I guess. Well, I think those are the main hiccups is like those details. Because again, if you're going to be, and we make mistakes, but if you're going to make mistakes, you have to be willing to admit it, apologize for it, and fix it. Do what you can to rectify it. And as long as we keep doing that, we have loyal customers that will keep coming back. And I think that's the secret sauce, really. And
you have experience as the owner for like 13 years or so and change, and you know the importance. Like you didn't grow just with new people. You grew with growing also your repeat clients stayed with you, very loyal to you. Yes. So you're probably doing something right when it comes to that service and acknowledging and admitting that you made a mistake and apologizing and fixing it. That's a good way to maintain that relationship with the clients, no matter what happened. But I want to ask you about new team members, new staff. How do you, like maybe even interns, I don't know, maybe now you have your own interns. How do you make sure that they know all of these things? Because there's so much things to remember.
Well, we have job descriptions. We have an employee handbook. We have an onboarding process. And then, of course, somebody, when they're new, you have to work with them, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I mean,
how do you do that? How do you actually test them?
Beginning, but it's like, let's say I have a thing, every week we meet. Okay, give me your weekly win. Tell me about something that you accomplished in the past week that you're proud of, whether it's some client feedback or you had a difficult problem or you anticipated something and did it, or you took it upon yourself to, I want people to be proactive and be like, okay, I have an idea, and not just sit there and wait for me to tell them to do something. And I want them to be proactive in providing the best possible customer service. So I try to highlight those things. And then I want to hear about what were the problems? Did we have any complaints? Did we have to give any refunds? Was somebody disappointed? I want to know. That doesn't happen every week, but it does happen. And I want to know about it because not only do I want to make sure that it's resolved to the person's satisfaction, I live in this community. I grew up in this community. I know most of these people personally. I'm going to see them socially in many cases. They may not be my friends, but I'm going to see them around town, whatever. I need to know if there was a problem because I need to know. And even sometimes I'll pick up the phone taking an order and it'll be so-and-so and I'll remember their name. Oh, last year. Or we'll have a little note saying there was a problem with this. And they are very assured when you say, oh, yes, I saw that this happened last time. And so I'm making special note of it. And we're going to make sure that we take extra good care of your order this time. And that goes a very long way.
Yes. That's actually really brilliant because especially when there was a mistake, if that client came back, you really need to be thankful and make sure that you, in full transparency, show them that you remember the mistake, that you are taking ownership of that mistake, that you will make sure that this time it will not just not happen, but you will make sure that you spoil them a little bit and they really feel reassured and seen. They feel seen. And how long is that training process, the onboarding process for a new team member for you?
It's about a month.
Yeah.
It's about a month. I mean, they're still working, they're still doing stuff, but that's in terms of they can jump into I don't hire people who have no experience. I mean, they have to have some experience before I always have someone make something, create something before I would hire them to evaluate it. Not so much because I'm expecting it to be utterly fantastic, but to see do they have any sense of color? Are their mechanics sound? I mean, obviously they're usually very nervous, so you can't like time them, but you can at least get a sense of, what they're able to do. So they should at least be able to do they should be able to do the basic things. And then of course they need to learn our style and learn our way of doing things. And that's what takes a little time. And they work with my manager on that.
So how many people in the team right now?
I have, including me, it's 8 employees.
Oh.
I'm considered an employee.
Well, you're working on the business and in the business at the moment.
Well, and that's another thing. I remember in that first Flower Palooza at Delaware Valley, one of the people said, if you're not paying yourself and you're not making a profit, why do you have this business? I mean, if you're just paying yourself, you're invested in a business that is just giving you a salary, which you could get without all the headache and risk of having a business. So you really need to be making a profit and
a salary,
and paying a salary. So I pay myself a salary. It's a reasonable salary. I mean, I'm preparing for my retirement and so on. I mean, this is my livelihood, as it is the livelihood of my employees. This is not, fooling around. They need to be able to pay their rent. They need to save for retirement. They need their health insurance. They need all of these things. So we have to be professional, and we have to be able to have a business that sustains all that.
How do you feel about firing? Like, did you ever had to do that?
Yes. I hate it. I hate any kind of confrontation or when I have to address issues. Generally, when it's, if it's somebody who's been with me for a while, usually what happens is that either something's happened, they've gotten, they've gotten burned out, or they're not excited about it anymore. The other thing is that maybe they don't want to grow, like they were fine but then they, as we grow and change. I'm a big believer in the concept of Kaizen, which is a Japanese concept of continual perfection. You improve like 1%, and then the next time you improve 1%, and you're improving 101%, then it's 101.1%. And so it's very tiny little bits of improvement constantly.
Yeah.
And I need people that work for me who understand that and buy into that, and always thinking about how can we do this a little bit better? How can we do this a little bit more efficiently? And so sometimes people they aren't able to grow with the needs of the business. And other times there's been other issues where people, were consistently late or insubordinate, or I had one where I hired someone. He had worked for another florist on the other side of town, on the other neighboring town, and he was very rough. And then I found out that he had been in jail for assaulting someone with a tire iron, which put him in the hospital for 6 months. And that just really scared me, that he was very rough. Like, there was one time where he did an arrangement for a client, and I know this client very well. I know what she likes. I know she's very picky. And I knew that she was not going to be happy with what we were doing. So I ended up pretending to deliver it. And then I brought it back and I redid it and delivered it later after he had gone today, because I was afraid to confront him. Anyway, so I had to fire him, and but I always have a witness when I have to let someone go, and generally there will have been conversations before that, and so it shouldn't be totally out of the blue. And I don't ever give reasons. I just say it's time to part ways, because they're going to argue with you. There's no reason to have that. The decision's been made, and that's it. So
you really can't get out of the conversation as soon as you start explaining.
Right.
The explanation part was in the previous call, where we told you, like, we gave you some sort of some sort of a conversation about what we're upset about or what we're not happy about.
Right.
Well, that kind of is also a part of being a business owner. You have to also be willing to do that. I want to ask you finally, as we are close to wrapping up the interview, about your specific experience with, you come from corporate, from sales and advertising. Did it ever help you directly with what you do in your floral business?
Oh, absolutely. Early in my career, I worked at Sotheby's, the fine art auction house, and I was in their marketing department, and I was intimately involved in their rebranding back in the early 80s. And that's when I had the chance to work with Massimo Vignelli. And my boss at the time, who has since become one of my best friends, I really learned a lot about branding. And from the very beginning, I was very careful about branding my company. Now, I don't have the resources of a Sotheby's or a Winston's or a really big floral shop. So within the context of what I can do, I'm consistent with my colors. I'm consistent with my typeface. I'm consistent with the look and feel. I try to be consistent. I'm struggling with our voice on social media, but I'm trying to be consistent with that. I'm trying to be consistent, again, like having what does our brand stand for, right? You have to decide. When you think of Apple, right, what do you think of? I think of cool products, right? That solve problems I didn't even know I had. So what do I want someone to think of when they think of the flower bar? I want them to think of extraordinary. I want them to think that they're going to get something really special from every sense of the word. So I think every business needs to think about that, and then think about how your visuals, your store, your every point of customer contact needs to reinforce that brand message.
I love it. And extraordinary is something that definitely is felt when you look at your designs on theflowerbar.com with dashes, the-flower-bar.com. It's really caught my attention as well. I want to ask you also about like walk-ins versus website purchases. Like, what do you and phone? Like, what's the split that you're experiencing, and what's your preference around that?
It's been pretty consistent for the entire 13 years, except during the pandemic, obviously. So it's it's since the pandemic, it's been, once we settled down after that, it's been about 20% online and 40% walk-in and 40% phone. And we are fortunate we're in a suburban New York City town, very wealthy town, very walkable. It's 1 square mile. I can walk here from my house. Everybody walks. There's lots of restaurants and shops. And so it's a very walkable place. So I have a lot of walk-in business, which is great. We have, but the walk-in business, they tend to spend the least amount of money. So that's always a challenge because they're coming in and they just want a little bouquet, right? So again, it's using principles. How do we get them? Because you want to make sure they're spending enough money for us to do the kind of job that they expect us to do, right? Someone coming in and saying they want to spend $50, but they want something, spectacular. Well, we can't do that. We can create a cute little bouquet, but it's not going to be. So it's all about educating your customer, the walk-ins, and you have to educate them on the phone as well because they don't know, right? So again, that's part of how we got our average sale up. Our web sales are always the highest average sale, and that's because the way you've designed it, the way you've priced it, it's easier to not have someone. People are always a little uncomfortable, I think, when they start talking about money, no matter how well trained they are.
Yes, in face-to-face, they kind of like they just easily say no to an add-on. And also, you don't actually ask them all of your add-ons because it's face-to-face. So it's both of the sides are closing in or being shy. But on your website, you can ask them, well, what about this? Well,
right.
Okay, so how about this one? Do you want that one? And
right.
They just need to make a decision. And often they just buy the more add-ons that increases your average sale online.
Right. Right.
And what
My goal is to get my web sales up a lot more. I think that they should be more like 30 to 40% of my sales. And what's great about the web is that it's much less labor intensive because I don't have someone having to answer the phone or help a customer. Someone walking in is spending the least amount of money and taking the most amount of time to help. So the more I can move that business to the web, the better. And I think a lot of that has to do as my client base ages, because I think that the older people are not as comfortable ordering something like flowers online as younger people. So anyway.
And as for event decor, is that something you're still interested in?
Yes. I mean, what's interesting is that in the beginning, of course, that's what I thought I was going to do. I was going to do it out of my house and I was going to be an event designer. Well, it turns out that I really don't like being an event designer. I find it very stressful. There's a lot to it. And I really don't know that much, so it's been, every time I've done it, I've had my share of disasters. It's always managed to pull it through, but every time I learned something new about what I could do differently to prevent those kinds of things from happening. During the pandemic, I was getting a lot of inquiries. And in the past, I always handled them. And I just didn't have time to do it because our retail business was so booming. So I actually brought in an event director 2 years ago, and he's doing a great job. We just signed a contract for a $78,000 wedding for decor in October. So I'm very excited about that. That's our biggest yet. But he's getting the average. Our average wedding used to be about 4, and now it's more like 10. And we're getting more and more of them. So the plan is to build that. It's really a separate business because it's very different from retail, but they certainly complement each other, and it helps them be a little bit more profitable when you have both, because you can sell the leftover flowers retail, but they're already being paid for by the florist. So you're kind of getting double, and you can share a lot of the resources. But my plan is to have that be about a third of our total revenue will be based on events.
Nice. And since you have the event director doing the actual planning of the wedding, decor and execution.
And he's been doing it for 35 years, so he knows what he's doing.
And he loves it and enjoys it. So you have separated yourself from doing the actual things that you don't actually enjoy anymore.
Right.
And you like being in the shop. Do you take days off?
Well, for years, for 12 years, no. I mean, I would try to take Sunday off, as much as I could. I mean, to try not to do any work,
Yes.
day off. My New Year's resolution this year was to take 2 days off a week. So I've been doing that. I mean, I end up working from home part of the day usually, but I'm not here. And I'm also not I used to feel like, I have to be here before everyone and be the last one to leave. No, I decided that I don't have to do that anymore. I mean, I come in, I have other things to do. I'm working on other things. I don't have to necessarily be in the shop to do them. So I'm here a lot, but I'm not here 9 to 6 every day of the week.
Thank God. This makes total sense that over time to build the trust with your team, that I'm sure that you train them well, that they can manage even for a full day.
Right. Well, I still have to be involved because, I have to get paid for something. I've got to do something. It's actually funny because during the pandemic, New York State didn't allow you to be open, but if you were the owner, you were allowed to work. So I was in here by myself.
Wow.
And I used the local taxi driver to do my deliveries. And I was here by myself and we were booming and it was crazy. I was working my tail off.
Yeah.
But I was designing, which I hadn't been able to do for a really long time. I really enjoyed it.
Wow.
Of course, now everyone's back and I don't get to design anymore, except in my head.
The flower subscriptions with weekly counts of businesses, that's something you managed to make it into a reality of a part of your business, or is that something still in construction?
Well, we've been doing subscriptions from the very beginning. They've been slowly growing. It's actually something I'm planning to talk to my marketing person about on Friday, because I'd like to see us grow that. It's not so much businesses. We have a couple businesses, but mostly it's individuals. We're in a suburban town. Our target client is, she lives in a beautiful home. She wants to feel like she watches HGTV. She wants to live the beautiful life. And part of that beautiful life is having fresh flowers in the home. So, and then her husband wants to make her happy. So that's kind of the whole rationale. So I have some clients and we do weekly deliveries of $200, $150. I have other clients where we do a monthly delivery for $50. So it really depends. We can try to work with whatever budget you have. It's all very customized, as opposed to, I've thought about doing something where it's like, okay, it's the seasonal bouquet and everybody gets it. It's on a Thursday and everybody gets the same thing. But that really that's almost like a different business, and requires a different skill set. And maybe if I was younger, I would say, okay, that would be something fun to do. But I'm going to stick to what we're good at, which is another thing I've learned. Don't do everything. Stick to what you're good at.
Love it. And that way, those monthly accounts or weekly, whatever, they feel like it's the same extraordinary experience of giving them something that is unique. They just are committed to those moments. Nancy, this has been really, really eye-opening and enlightening to share this time with you. I want to tell you that you really do care about the details of what you do, but also the vision of why you're doing it. You have a lot of clarity around that, and that shows. I want to thank you for being here on this show. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure. All right.
And thank you, everyone, for listening for another episode of the Floral Shop podcast. See you next week, and we'll put a link to the flower bar on our show notes, so you can check Nancy's website and designs. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into the Floral Shop podcast. For more floral resources and stories, visit our website, floralshoppodcast.com, or step into our school at floralshopacademy.com. Don't forget to subscribe for our next flowery adventure. Keep blooming until we meet again.